Hello and welcome to DROIX. In this video we will be running some system and gaming benchmarks on the GPD Win MAX 2021 i7 model, and after that we will check out some games and higher end console emulators. A quick mention that you can order the GPD Win MAX 2021 from us at DROIX. It's shipped and supported from the UK. It comes with a full 2-year warranty, so there's no returning it to China. We also have excellent UK based customer service and technical support should you need it. Visit now at droix.co.uk and order yours today. Let's first take a very brief look at the Win MAX i7 model specs. It features the 11th gen Intel i7-1195G7 processor with a maximum frequency of 5 GHz. The Intel Iris Xe graphics has 96 execution units and a max frequency of 1.4 GHz. You can find 16 gigs of fast 4206 MHz RAM and 1TB of NVMe SSD. It is powered by 3 5000 hour milliamp batteries, which is great for 3 to 8 hours depending on usage. We start the benchmarks with PassMark, which stress tests the CPU, GPU, RAM and storage to the maximum. It gives us a good look at artificial performance on the Win MAX. The score is a very impressive 3703, with average scores on the CPU and RAM and above average on the storage. PCMark performs tests that you would find in day-to-day situations such as web browsing, consuming media, working with office documents, media editing and much more. It gives a good indication of performance on what you may be using the GPD Win MAX whilst not gaming. PCMark gives a score of 5503. There's a good jump in performance over the older 1195G7 processor of around 500 points, which is great to see. 3DMark tests the CPU and GPU over a series of benchmarks. It gives us a good idea of what kind of performance we will see when they are working together. The GPD Win MAX gives us a score of 1409. We run this test a few times as the score is showing lower than it should be. We were expecting more in the 1800 score area. This might be a typical Intel driver issue or something to do with 3DMark. We will be comparing these gaming benchmark results in a separate video once we have the AMD Ryzen 7 model, but in the meantime you can view the results for the Intel i7 model. We have set the resolution to 720p and the graphics to the default Ultra settings. This gives us a good idea of gaming performance compared to other handhelds and mini PCs. The GPD Win MAX 2021 scores an impressive 43 frames per second, with a lower 37 and the eye of the target 60. This is the highest score we have seen on handhelds, and it is expected as it's a faster processor. Final Fantasy XIV benchmark is a good test to run as the expansion is out later this year, so we can get a good idea of future games performance. We are running at 1080p on maximum desktop settings. The Win MAX scores a very impressive 4558. Again, this is the highest we have scored on handhelds. It does show there is a good improvement in performance over the 1165G7 processor, which for example scored in the low 4000s. Street Fighter V is set to 1080p at maximum graphics quality to really push the CPU and GPU. We get an average of 40 frames per second, which is still very good. With a few changes to the graphics or simply lowering the resolution to 720p, we can get a stable 60 FPS very easily. A quick note to ask if you could take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you have not already. 80% of our viewers are not subscribed and we are working hard to build this channel up. Also, if we get more subscribers, I can ask my boss to get more great gadgets to review. So it's a win-win for everyone. Next up, we have some gameplay footage from a bunch of games, and after that some emulators. For the games, we are running at the default 1280 by 800 resolution, or if that is not supported, then we use 1280 by 720. BloodRayne is running on maximum settings and it has a solid 60 FPS. It's not a highly demanding game, as you can see from the CPU and GPU usage, but it looks and runs great on the Win MAX 2021. WRC10 is a very demanding game, and as such the graphic settings are set to mostly low with higher quality textures. Post-processing effects are also switched off. For most of the game, the FPS is hovering around the high 50s to 60s, depending on how busy the scene was at that time. We have set everything to max for Quake Enhanced and it runs absolutely smooth. There's no stuttering or frame drops. I have turned up the in-game brightness settings as the game is naturally dark, otherwise it would be very hard to see on the camera with the screen reflecting. Mass Effect Legendary runs great on the Win MAX 2021. We saw with the 11-95G7 processor that it was not quite fast enough for a stable 60 FPS, but with the 11-95G7 it definitely remains more in that area. The game plays very well and I did not experience any major frame drops whilst playing. I saw this quite fun shooter the other day and thought to give it a go. The game is not very demanding and you can essentially set everything to maximum and not have to worry about frame drops. RICO London plays very well on the GPD Win MAX. Onto some emulators now, and we start with the PSP. God of War is my go-to game to check for performance. We are running at 3x rendering resolution and the emulator remains at a solid 60 FPS. You could probably change a few more settings to increase the quality and still remain at 60. I tried a few Xbox games and overall the ones that are compatible work very well. Mashed performs very well on the emulator and you can increase the upscaling for improved visuals. It does however depend on the game and if the emulator is compatible for how well it works. With PS2 emulation you should have no issues. I tried a number of different games and they all had solid frame rates. You can increase the graphics quality settings for a lot of games and overall PS2 emulation works very well. On the Win MAX it's the best I've seen running on a handheld. My go-to PS3 game, Skate 3, seems to be having some graphics issues. It's definitely not down to the Win MAX, as the latest version of the emulator or drivers are causing the problems on the ONEXPLAYER as well. You can however see that we are getting a nice 30 to 40 FPS, which again is very good. Quickly switching over to DuckTales, we get a solid 60 FPS throughout the time spent playing. While it's not as demanding as Skate 3, it is extremely playable, as are a fair few games on the emulator. The GPD Win MAX 2021 is a bit of a dark horse in the current hype of gaming handhelds. The GPD Win 3 and the ONEXPLAYER have been very popular, and then the Win MAX turns up and blows them all away with the faster processor. Both these other models will also be receiving an upgrade to the newer processor, so it will make a nice comparison to make in a future video. Overall, I am very impressed with the Win MAX 2021 i7 version. That extra boost in performance does make a noticeable difference in a lot of games where they may not have been quite fast enough to get a stable 60 FPS. Mass Effect Legendary is a very good example of that. We do hope to have the Ryzen 7 model of the Win MAX very soon, and we will be making a similar video to this one to see the model's performance. We will also be making a comparison video, putting the i7 and Ryzen 7 models against each other to see any performance differences. Thanks for watching this benchmark and gameplay video. We hope you have found it useful. Please subscribe if you have not already, as it really does help us a lot in building this channel up. We hope to see you back in our next video.